After 7 years, it's the end of You, or rather, the end of its main character, the misogynistic, manipulative, and murderous Joe Goldberg. In crafting the harrowing end to a saga filled with deceit, treachery, and countless lives lost, the pulse-pounding Netflix drama had to go back to form, focusing on his object of desire. Each season's new You. This time around, Bronte becomes an avatar for the audience, subverting Joe's cunning to bring about his downfall. The show concludes with Joe behind bars. In Season 5, Joe and his British wife, Kate, and small son, Henry, are back in New York City, the place where it all began. Being a successful company executive, Kate and Joe gain notoriety and are invited to all the glitzy social gatherings. Joe appears on magazine covers and gains notoriety as her devoted spouse. He is viewed by the people as Prince Charming. However, things aren't going well between Joe and Kate. Joe meets Bronte and has an affair with her after growing disillusioned with his life. A down-on-her-luck female who likes to talk literature with him. She's exactly his kind. A revelation occurs halfway through the season. Bronte isn't who she appears to be. Joe was the victim of her catfish. Episode 9 of Season 5 of You marks the point at which there is no going back. Kate uses her riches and influence to free Nadia, who is serving a term for a crime Joe committed, in order to discover the truth. Together, they also find Marianne, who, with Nadia's assistance, staged her death in Season 4 and get away from Joe. In an attempt to persuade Joe to confess to his misdeeds, the three of them successfully lock him inside the glass cell he maintains in Mooney's basement. When that doesn't work, Kate sends her allies out to kill Joe since she believes it's the only way to permanently stop him. After saying goodbye, Joe manages to get away with a key that he had grafted into a cut on his arm. This leads to a violent altercation with Kate in which both of them sustain serious injuries. Maddie visits Mooney's to exact revenge while Kate and Joe quarrel in the basement. Maddie descends into drug misuse after killing her twin sister and posing as her in public to maintain the illusion Joe created. Harrison, Regan's husband and Maddie's boyfriend, eventually discovers the truth. Joe fabricates incriminating evidence to put Harrison and Maddie in jail despite their vows of secrecy. The unstable Lockwood chooses to burn Mooney's when Harrison, who has signed a confession to free Maddie, is let out. Joe is still imprisoned in the basement while the bookstore burns down despite having escaped Kate's cage. Kate gets Joe to confess to killing Love in their last moments, and she sends Nadia the voice recording right away. When the truth is revealed, Joe is on the verge of passing away beside Kate when Destiny steps in. Joe is saved when Bronte dashes into the flaming bookshop and pulls him out. According to him, the gesture is the clearest indication of Bronte's unwavering devotion. Joe is unaware, though, that Bronte ultimately learns the unpleasant truth about Joe's purported love earlier in the evening when she speaks with Marianne. Bronte cannot allow Joe to die before the world recognizes him as the monster he is because she is committed to seeing him held accountable. Ron partially narrates the last episode of You, giving viewers insight into her innermost thoughts as she awakens and discovers Joe's true deceit. Joe and Bronte drive north toward the Canadian border after fleeing the burning bookstore. Will Bettelheim, a returning Season 2 figure whose proficiency in hacking enables him to assist in obtaining fictitious passports, has been called upon by Joe. Joe intends to leave the nation, give things some time to settle, and give himself more time to combat Kate's damning audio message. However, Joe breaks into a quaint house by a lake, a remote location he attempts to pass off as romantic in order to wait for the passports. In an attempt to lower Joe's defenses, Bronte complies. When the moment arrives, she makes her actual intentions known by threatening Joe with a gun. When Joe decided to finish Beck's manuscript to match his story, Bronte says he not only snatched her life, but also her voice. As a result, she makes Joe edit a copy of Beck's book, marking out with a marker any addition he makes to her work. Will is able to link Joe's phone to a game server that his son Henry uses while Joe is working on the modifications. In his final exchange with his son, Henry expresses his understanding that his father is a monster and that he will never talk to him again. When Bronte tries to contact the police, Joe, who has little to lose, attacks her and shoots her in the stomach with her gun. Before heading back to the home, Bronte hides behind the trees in the neighboring woods and waits for Joe to follow her alleged trail. After entering, Bronte frantically attempts to use Joe's phone to dial 911, which is difficult given that she is bleeding and the phone's screen was broken during the last fight. When Joe discovers he has been duped, he quickly returns home, forcing Bronte to leap out of a window in order to survive. She eventually contacts the police, but she is unable to escape Joe due to an injured ankle. Joe realizes what has transpired and attempts to flee after hearing sirens in the distance. He murders a policeman and continues to flee farther into the forest until Bronte stops him. With a revolver in her hands, she is back in control after surviving the murder attempt. Joe asks Bronte to murder him since he knows there is no other option. He wants Bronte to pull the trigger because he would rather die than live a lonely life behind bars. knowing that the world must see how dangerous Joe is in order for women everywhere to realize the deadly consequences that await those who disregard warning signs out of love. Bronte declines. Joe leaps at Bronte to grab her hand, but she shoots him to stop him. Suddenly, Joe is apprehended by the cops, his legs oozing blood. And lastly, Joe, who is destined to live his entire life behind bars. Joe muses over his unjust punishment and how loneliness is worse than he thought in the show's closing scenes. But even while behind bars, Joe continues to get fan mail from women who imagine being manipulated and disciplined by Joe. Given that everyone is a product of their surroundings, Joe uses this to question whether he is the only one responsible for his actions. Therefore, in a sense, a culture that glorifies toxic love and serial murders encourages individuals like Joe to carry out their actions. Joe asks the audience if they are somehow implicated in his crimes as he looks straight into the screen in the film's closing scene. The show's controversy and the adoration that Joe Goldberg receives from fans in spite of his terrible behavior are both covered in this terrifying finale.